Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Solo Spotlight here at Spare Bedroom Studios. Today, I'm sitting down with Harrison Amit, the CEO and founder of HOVR, a Canadian rideshare company shaking things up by eliminating commissions and prioritizing transparency and fairness for drivers and riders alike. We dive deep into Harrison's entrepreneurial journey, the challenges of building a company that competes with giants like Uber and Lyft, and how he's successfully navigating the complex regulations across Canada. We also talk about his strategies for scaling sustainability, building authentic connections with drivers, and his bold vision for taking HOVR global. Stick around as Harrison drops some amazing wisdom on why falling in love with the problem is key to success, and why in business your will has to be stronger than your skill. Let's jump into it. Here's episode 45, Solo Spotlight with Harrison Amit. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Solo Spotlight with Ryan McDougall. This is episode 45. I'm here with Harrison.
Yes, sir.
You founder, CEO of HOVR on a coast-to-coast tour across the country. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
I'm super grateful to have you. We kind of know each other from back in the university days. I've been following a lot of your content ever since you started it. Like, good for you. What you're trying to do and how you're trying to accomplish it. It's very noble. Congratulations on all the success.
Thanks, man.
And I'm really hoping I can break this open, get you some exposure in the Edmonton area. Most of our following is in the Edmonton area. How's the trip been going so far?
Honestly, man, we made our way from Toronto all the way to Victoria, mile 0 on the Trans-Canada, and we're just working our way back east all the way to St. John's, Newfoundland, and so far so good. Can't complain. It's been a heck of a ride so far. Some amazing stops, some great people, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, you guys had a little trouble with the ferry.
Yeah, we did. You saw that
Yeah,
clip,
you guys had a little trouble with the ferry.
Yeah, that was one of those times where you just got to sit back, realize that everything happens for a reason. There's always an upside and downside situations, and at the end of the day, we wouldn't have caught that beautiful sunset with the whales or whatever they were, porpoises that were going in the water, if we hadn't been delayed, or it's not really delayed. We just neglected to actually book a way back because the way there was so smooth. Just a
miscommunication, or just like a error in that way.
Yeah,
but
miscalculation.
Miscalculation.
Yeah.
But that's exciting. And having a startup, you're obviously going to have these bumps in the roads. You're obviously it's the same thing with something like this, where tons of times where you're like, oh, I screwed something up and now I have to recourse or whatever it is. But that's amazing. You guys, how many days have you been now? How many days has it been?
So this is day 8 of our trip, 8 out of 28. And we're 30% of the way in, or roughly there. And it's, like I said, been a great trip so far. Some good stops, tons of drivers. At every city we go to, we kind of did the lower cities on the way over. Mm-hmm. So Winnipeg, Regina, Calgary, and then obviously Vancouver, Victoria, and now we're going on the top side, so we're here in Edmonton with you, and then tomorrow we'll be in Saskatoon, then we'll cross back through into Winnipeg on our way over to St. John's.
Right. Fun fact, Winnipeg, slushy capital of Canada.
Yeah?
Yeah. Hotel, I was at the Super 8, and they had complimentary slushies, and I was like, what a cool, amenity. And then someone's like, no, everybody has slushies. That's like their thing. And I was like, oh, that's not fun anymore.
Well, we're totally going to have to get a slushie on our way back, because on the way there, we did not know that. So thank you for sharing that. So
I was like, these people are genius. And then they're like, no, everybody's doing it, man.
That's funny. Yeah, no, what we'd Googled was, because we tried to do a food stop to kind of, some iconic place. And in Winnipeg, it was the Fat Boy Burger.
Right.
Which is essentially a burger with a bunch of chili on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because unintentionally, we've happened to have a ton of burgers all along our route. I mean, last night we had an amazing bison burger.
Yeah.
But honestly, shout out Edmonton. I got to highlight this place. We were there earlier today at Let's Smash.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you heard
Smash
of them?
Burgers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were fantastic.
Yeah.
Like they're making their way to the top of our burger journey, unintentional burger journey.
One of the biggest things that I came to recognize when I moved here was the food scene is phenomenal, and it's simply just like diversity, right? Like there's so many different like cultures and ethnicities that live here. Like you have so many different options of like one day you can have pho, the next day you're having Mediterranean, the next day you're having Turkish food. Like it's incredible, man. Edmonton is a wicked spot, and it's a growing area, hence why you guys chose the Edmonton area as part of like the rollout.
Oh,
and
it's one of the major cities in Canada. We had to, you know what I mean? So speaking of diversity though, not to go too far off track, but I mean, cruising across the country, we have seen so much more diversity than I guess maybe expected. I know that the city centers tend to have, you know, that kind of expectation that, you know, Canada's a multicultural society and culture now, but even across through the small towns, I mean, we saw people of all walks of life from all around the world. And I got to shout out the Wawa burger. I mean, geez, I'm looking at Chris over there because that Wawa burger in Northern Ontario on the way over, I mean, it was a Middle Eastern family kind of shop. Yeah. But that burger's got top place right now.
Oh yeah, it's great. Getting into it, before I get into the questions, I want to ask, what has been your strategy in like gaining exposure? Like what kind of strategies have you put in place? I know you guys are doing a t-shirt every day, or you guys are doing the different t-shirts. That's an amazing strategy. But what else have you been doing? I know you've been reaching out to like, you guys have been getting exposure through local medias and stuff like that. Yeah. What other things have you been using to really like branch that exposure and really get it outside of the Ontario GTA area?
Yeah, so it's kind of wild because, you know, we have over 60,000 drivers across the country who downloaded our app in the first 12 months. And that's really what catalyzed us being like, we need to go to the people.
Yeah, there's a need.
Right? It's there. It's loud and clear, and we're here addressing it. And we're literally screaming, HOVR's here to help. You know, like, let's do it. Let's get it done. And so, you know, in terms of strategies, like transparently speaking, we had a whiteboard full of intent, you know, prior to leaving Toronto of every day we're going to do all these things. And it's been, you know, just the sheer volume of content that it is getting pushed out. I mean, Chris has been doing an amazing job on the fly, editing everything. We don't have a huge team back home that are kind of piecing this all together in the background.
Right.
This is Chris and I in the car, getting it done daily. You mentioned the t-shirts. We are having a daily t-shirt drop. Yeah. You know, shopridehover.com. Yeah. A little plug. But it's been great, man. The local media have been super supportive. From Global in Regina all the way to CTV in Stanley Park in Vancouver, and some different articles and radio stations. I mean, people are interested. They want to know, why are we doing this, and what's the purpose? And we're just like really simply saying, HOVR is here. We're pushing this Canadian rideshare platform. We don't have a national platform, and it's about time. And that's kind of how HOVR started in the first place. You know, when I went to Toronto and, you know, started getting using rideshare to get around the city and talking to all these drivers from different places.
So let's get into that. What kind of sparked the move to Ontario? So let's start university. Yeah. You're making a shift. How did you go from small town to Ontario, and how did that look like for you? What were kind of like what were the apprehensions?
Yeah, I mean, so okay, small town Nova Scotia. I mean, I always kind of knew that I was going to go somewhere. I didn't necessarily know where, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. But there was a clear path presented to me in the summer of 2018 to make my way up to Toronto. And so I just kind of took it, right? I was moving away from, you know, the nutrition and health and wellness side of things, which was my degree at Mount St. Vincent. You know, with the double major in business, really helped out with kind of navigating the business environment. And we had, you know, a business going on the East Coast. And then once that kind of transitioned into kind of what am I going to do next, Toronto seemed like the right place to go. Yeah. And so, you know, having some connections up there because of another startup that I was working with at the time, I figured I'd just make the move. I mean, took that leap of faith, and you know, my dad and I just hopped in the car, drove over there, and made a new home, I guess you could call it. Right. But in terms of what did it look like, it looked like just looking at the opportunities that were in front of me and kind of whiteboarding the pros and cons of each of them, and realizing that Toronto probably had the greatest upside in terms of opportunity for me to pursue entrepreneurial ambitions and fulfill that kind of itch that I had that I wasn't getting from any of not that I work corporate jobs, but structured jobs where there's a boss and other employees and you don't really choose your own hours. You kind of have to work on a schedule. That just wasn't necessarily where I saw myself going for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I always knew that I wanted to pursue something that would help others. And so I figured if we go to the biggest city in Canada, I'll get the most exposure to the largest group of people to figure out who, what, where, and when, and how I could help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it seems too, like when you say working in the corporate world and stuff, it's like some people have like unfathomable ambition where it's like, you can't stop me, man. Like, it's like, I get it. I'm willing to be your workhorse or whatever it is for the time being.
Yeah.
But it's like, I got bigger fish to fry, man. I got big dreams, right?
Yeah.
And so how soon from moving to Ontario that you develop HOVR and you start to understand? So you talk about your experience with rideshare companies and your experience in using them. And where did you find this gap?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I didn't have a vehicle with me, so like the easiest way to get around was to download an app and hop in a rideshare. So I was doing like 2 or 3 rides a day, just getting to different events, venues, conferences, just networking my butt off everywhere in Toronto, meeting as many people as I could, because that was the game plan, right? Like figure out what I'm going to do next. And I found myself in a position where I was meeting a ton of brilliant inventors and engineers and other founders who had, I would say, challenges communicating what it was they were actually doing. So they weren't necessarily getting off the ground the way they thought they would with their brilliant ideas. And that's where I would step in. I'd say, hey, like, I just introduced myself. My name's Harrison. I think I like what you're doing. I'd like to learn more. And how could I help? And again, just extending that helping hand and trying to understand, on a deeper level, what it was that some of these founders were trying to accomplish, and connecting some dots here and there with some of the network that I built up for myself, and being able to get deals done. That's really how it all started. But once I had some clients, I was literally in like 2-3 Ubers a day now, right? And I'm talking to these drivers, I'm meeting people from all over the world, hearing their stories of how they came to Canada, what they're driving rideshare for, sending money back home, putting kids through college, like whatever the case may be. The stories just started weighing in on me, and I was always looking for a Canadian option too, which that was the number one
available.
gap. Yeah, nothing, right? So no Canadian option. Platforms that were fairly exploitative. I mean, 30 to 50% of the fares
it's commission
going
to
back.
the company. Yeah,
Exactly. It's a huge chunk.
Yeah.
I mean, any regular worker whose boss came and said, "Hey, Ryan, I'm going to be taking 30% of your paycheck
it's like,
this
I
month.
quit.
You're done."
Yeah, I quit. I'm going to go find somewhere else, man.
Exactly. And with no other options,
you're stuck.
You're now left with, one of the companies is basically a graveyard of drivers who were deactivated from the other company.
Right.
And so, to put forward a Canadian option like HOVR into the ecosystem just felt like everything drew me towards it. And then once I started, getting involved in the space and networking with people more in that industry, and then once Uber went public in 2019, that's when I was really able to do a bit more of an analysis of the industry, because once a company's public, everything's available, and you can demystify some of the ebbs and flows of the decisions that were made, and how they're shaping themselves, and also leaving things on the table for somebody like HOVR to come along and scoop up and repackage and put together without the burden of really having to establish the industry. So I'll acknowledge they really paved the road for us to drive on.
Right.
But
they said like it's like they're the ones that opened the doors, and then people were able to like follow in different areas, right, and branch off into other things, and like things that are obviously more sustainable and more, they're right, like better for the driver, better for the rider.
100%.
Right. And it's a different thing, right? When you were meeting with all these different investors and clients, was there a big like age gap? Did you find it was hard to like earn credibility as like being in like a younger age group or younger demographic? And just as much as it kind of harmed you, it probably helped you too, because you were able to say, well, look, like I can leverage like what I know and my expertise with the generation that I grew up with. Kind of talk me through that in terms of going through that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, moving to Toronto in my early 20s, edging into my mid 20s, there was definitely an age gap. But I've always kind of hung out with an older crowd. I've always resonated better with, I would say, the millennial generation. I'm at the very bottom of the spectrum. Like I literally made it in by 3 months. But at the top of the spectrum is where I really found a lot of synergies with the mentality around how we could get things done. And there's this true, and by the way, if people do kind of discard me or would discard me for my age, I had no bit. I completely shut it down. Just move on. There's so many people.
You have to, and I'm sure as you see in the business world, it's like you also have to have some like respect for yourself and some integrity, 100%. Knowing your worth, right? Like, like sometimes it's just not the right fit, or some, 100%. and you can't force it because you're just going to screw yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to fit a circle into a square. Right. You just find the circle that's good for you, and the people that will resonate with you, that are on your same frequency. And at the end of the day, if you get shit done, people are going to keep looking at you.
That's right. It's like you let the work speak for itself.
100%.
You make it, they will come.
Yeah, like under promise, over deliver has kind of been the mantra. Try to keep that tempo. And to be honest with you, one of the reasons in the consulting practice that I built up with the clients that we had, trying to scale that in Toronto, I'll be very blunt. You meet so many people that just overpromise and underdeliver that it makes it so hard to scale, because we would hire somebody on as another consultant and they would go out there and close a deal, but have sold the moon and the stars, and they don't even know how to jump yet. Mm-hmm. They come back and they say, "Hey, Harrison, figure it out." I'm like, well,
it's not possible.
That's not what we agreed to. This is not how we do business. This is not how we carry ourselves. And I'd figure it out to a certain degree, but I'd always preface it with those new clients that were brought in that this is not how we operate. And we will do what we can, but I have to hone in the expectation that was set. And that person no longer works for us anymore. Is
like managing expectations a kind of skill that you had to learn? And like kind of where did that kind of be in your journey of like having those tough conversations? Because some people are genuinely scared of conflict. Yeah. It's like, whether it's whatever it is, it's like some people, even if it's like, hey man, like you just ain't fitting what we need, and like it's just, it's business, not personal.
Yeah.
And some people, they have a really hard time doing that because everybody's their best friend, right?
Yeah.
And it's like this emotional, like, and was that like a challenge for you to be able to separate that?
I think challenge is a good word, but my reality is that I learned that early from witnessing it happen in other organizations that were my clients, right? So, and seeing that kind of almost mentor-like figure just make those tough decisions over and over and over again, that really kind of resonated with me in a way where I understand this has to be done. It just is what it is. It's a part of the gig. You do have to make tough decisions. You do have to set expectations. And even with HOVR, I mean, listen, we exceeded our own expectations when we launched, and then kind of set a higher expectation for ourselves based off initial traction. And then we had to reset and reposition and restructure so that we could kind of get back to our systematic approach of getting things done. But yeah, I mean, listen, I've had to make some absurdly hard decisions that I don't think the majority of people could make in order to get to where we are today.
Well, and when you have so much of a backing, even something as much as switching your logo, like even something that's redesigning your logo, it's like, okay, how am I going to explain this to X amount of investors that this is a great idea?
Yeah.
And if there's any pushback, what's the dialogue that I have? I got to reach into my pocket and I have answer A, answer B, answer C.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to come up with these like flow charts of like, if this guy asked me this is what I'm going to say. But he might ask me this, and this is what I have to say, right? And like even just fleshing that out is a very like time-taking process, right?
Yeah, I mean, nice catch on the logo. And not many people would notice that because the changes we made were so subtle. But like honestly, the first logo was me on Canva messing around and just trying to make something that we thought would be all right. And then once we hired professionals and they joined our team from the design perspective and UI UX, once it was presented to us, it spoke to us immediately, you know, and there were some things I'm not going to know about these things, like the color scheme on the visibility spectrum and all these different things, right? To shift the green down 3 shades in order to be more visible across certain mediums. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking I got to get shit done. I got to get things going, and let me just pump something out that might work.
Yeah.
Right. But
and it's really interesting too, because like you're starting this and you're growing this. How many instances did you kind of have to measure? Is this something I can do, or is this something that's like outside? Like I look at like with podcasting, like SEO work and like all the backdoor stuff. It's like you start doing that too much, you're gonna ruin some things, right? And at some point you have to have like the maturity to be like, you know what, like I'm not an electrician, so I ain't, you know, because I'll kill myself, I'll die, right? So it's like those are challenging decisions, man. And but like you talk about mentors and like some mentorship. What was some like early advice that you were given that kind of stuck with you and that like you still carry today?
It's less advice and more of what I've witnessed those people do. Like, for example, I'm going to highlight, it's cliche, but my father, right? Mm. He had the biggest heart. He ran an organization that supported people with intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities back home. And just the way that he conducted himself, composed himself, and managed, 100+ people at the employment level. I mean, it's something that I always looked up to and was able to take away a ton from. And then, one of my early jobs in Halifax was as a Segway tour guide with our mutual friend Scotty T.
Yeah.
And Scotty just kind of tapped me on the shoulder one day and said, "I think you should do this with me, man."
Yeah.
And we had a great time doing it. But Max Rastelli, the owner of Segway Nova Scotia, that man's work ethic is incredible. Mm-hmm. Absolutely absurd. And I guess something I should go back to my dad with, work ethic. That was one thing. I'd see him at the dinner table, the dining room table rather, working after hours, overtime always. Same thing with Max, after hours, overtime, polishing the Segways, wiping things down. He's the owner. He's hired people to do these things. Mm-hmm. And we were slackers, man. Like, we weren't good at washing down the Segways. We were good at giving the tours, but, those extra details that really matter, and the pride of ownership, and now with one of our lead investors, Rick Chad of Chad Management, I mean, that guy's still in the office with us until like 9-10 p.m. Mm-hmm. almost every day. Right?
Do you find that it almost enhances your relationship with those people now that you've seen it in your own like personal firsthand? Like it's one thing to see it, and then it's another thing to do it and go, oh shit, this is just as hard as I like, you know what I mean? If not harder. Yeah. But then you're like, oh, I got to go back and give these people their flowers because like I kind of underestimated, or not even underestimated, but kind of like you see it in firsthand and you're like, yep.
Well, I think why it resonated with me is that I recognized it. I would see it and I'd be like, yep, that's what it takes, right? And that's what kind of started to ingrain those patterns. Like, I've always worked absurdly long hours. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like you wake up early, you go to bed late, repeat, recycle, just continue that kind of grind. And I get told all the time, well, that's unhealthy, you got to take a break, you got to find time for yourself.
You got to be delusional. Well, at some point, people say all the time, in order to like succeed, you're not going to see a lot of work-life balance. No. That's just how it is. Yeah, and in today's society, it's like it's very hard. It's really hard to start anything up because there's a monopoly on almost everything, right?
It's true.
And it's like, to break through in anything, like, what if one day you were like, hey, I have a few $1 million, I want to open a grocery store. Good luck. It's because people just have you trumped, right? Like, it's... Well,
there's that mentality, but there's also, I think, if you analyze certain things and look at things through a different lens, you may find the gaps where you can get started. Mm-hmm. And once that ball is rolling, if you can snowball right down the hill and gain some momentum, you can find your space, right? And that's where I think, a ton of people, especially in Canada, like they'll have this, similar kind of, man, everything's monopolized. And it is true, right? Grocery, telco, right? But you can find a space, right? And you can identify, hey, like, maybe if I don't have an example for grocery,
Right.
But, it's about what if you organized all the farmers markets,
Right.
and conglomerated them and gave them buying power the same way that grocery stores leverage.
And it's interesting you say that, because a lot of times when people come to me with their ideas, I say you're only limited by your creativity.
100%.
I say that the only limitation is you just haven't thought of how to do it.
Yeah.
Like one guy was like, I want to do blades. He wanted to make blades. And he's like, oh, the course and this, and I don't see myself making money. It's like, well, have you thought about like learning it and doing YouTube tutorials? Have you thought about making a Shopify store? Have you thought about like all of these workshops, like whatever, right? But it's, people are limited by like their creativity.
Yeah, no,
right?
100%. And to go back to your question, what if there's a takeaway that I've learned? I think across the board, every one of those kind of mentors, if you will, that I've just identified, they've all in their own way said this, and I'm paraphrasing, and this is the way that I say it these days: you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, other than time and money.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you can manage those two and find the space where you've got enough comfort, where you're taking the risks that are needed to be taken, and you're not wasting time, right? Because people, I think, often plan too much, no action. Right? Because the action is the risk. And so there's a balance and a ratio that you want to find that will actually put you on that trajectory path of being somewhat successful, to then attract some, people that can help you get to that next stage of a bit more successful, to then together achieve success.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because I listen to a lot of Chris Williamson, and he read a quote, and it's like, the only way to do the thing is doing the thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, that's as simple as it is. Yeah. Like, you can have all these great ideas and this and that, but like, the only way to do it is to do it.
Yeah.
And that's it, right?
100%.
So you're going through this, you're getting these investors. What were some of like your early challenges of development? Like when you look at, say, you want to make an app, what kind of training process was involved in terms of learning how apps work?
Yeah, so I guess I've had the benefit of having clients who had different projects, from everything to like augmented reality all the way through to hydrogen systems. And so learning what they were doing in order to be able to help them best, and understanding their workflows, their procedures, their policies that were being developed in real time, because 90% of them were startups, it kind of gave me a lens to look through of, here's how I could do it better over here. Right? And so there was always that continuous learning, that continuous adapting of different methodologies, different strategies. You're always learning, and putting some of it in practice and putting your own spin on it, I think, is where you start to see where you can actually create something of value internally that can then project externally. But yeah, I mean, what we had to learn in the beginning, like I made the decision early on that we would work with a contract company to build the first platform. In hindsight, terrible idea. And terrible for a couple of different reasons. You don't have full control.
And any adjustments cost a shit ton of money, right?
Well, here's the thing, Ryan. We had a company that we were working with that had on contract a certain rate per hour. And then after they saw some success, they decided to effectively tear up that contract and increase the price 3x per hour for development, which made any adjustments unfeasible. Yeah. Right. And then you're kind of you're kind of strangled by it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I had a different expression, but I'll go with strangled
of course,
by it.
Yeah.
And
you're handcuffed.
Yeah, you're handcuffed. That's
you're handcuffed. Yeah.
And so we quickly, because just to dive in a bit of the reality, so we launched in May 2024, May 2nd, right? And in the first 48 hours, 8,000 drivers downloaded the app and started submitting documents.
Right.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
We projected 12,000 for all of year one. Right. At a steady kind of growth of 1,000 per month type of deal. Because prior to launch, we had recruited by calling our competitors and getting in those cars the first 1,000 drivers. Mm-hmm. Right. So with that initial boost, and then by the end of month one, having over 20,000 drivers having downloaded the app just in the Greater Toronto area, it was like, okay, shit, we have to really make some adjustments in the back end. We got to start tweaking things and adding some feature sets that we weren't expecting to put out there that quickly. And like we just mentioned, the contract company, the rates just skyrocketed and it became unsustainable. So we did a cost benefit analysis of actually building out our own internal team and what it would take to build our own app end to end from scratch, which I'm super proud to say today, HOVR 2.0 is 100% owned by Ride HOVR Corporation, developed by our internal team, half onshore, half offshore. We actually have our own office that we situated in India, and myself and my CTO Gurjant Singh, we hopped on a plane. We hand bombed in our luggage some MacBook Pros, and the cost difference of actually purchasing them in Canada and flying them over ourselves versus buying them in India was the exact same cost of the entire trip. We actually ended up saving about $600 after going there and back.
Now, during this time where you see this spike, what did your team look like? What was your team size? Like, and what I'm trying to get at this is, how did you ensure you didn't remain in like a thought silo of like, how were you able to still have like somewhat of a creative direction, but also get credible feedback? Because you don't want to ask too many people, but you also want to make sure you're in the right room with the right people. So how did that look like to ensure that like you're not just bouncing thoughts between your cranium?
Yeah, I mean, so first we went from a team of 6 to, by the end of May, a team of 18.
Right.
Which was just aggressive, right? We're talking about hiring, training, and getting people up to date on our current systems, how we work, our brand, our language, everything very quickly. And that was quite a feat. And we've condensed that team down since, and some people have left, we have added new bodies, and we've kind of shaped a bit more of a culture that's not so rush to and try to meet demand to, okay, this is our pace, and we're going to roll at our speed, and not somebody else's speed. And that was something that we definitely had to learn, because, you know, at every corner, in the best way possible, people wanted to help. They wanted to partner. They wanted to establish some form of a relationship where, oh, you can help drive people here. Oh, here's some customers there. But you can't do everything, right? And we learned that pretty quickly. And so, you know, narrowing in on providing a ride above the rest, focusing on the experience, having a great experience for the drivers, a great experience for the riders. That's our day to day, right? And that means, you know, driver success team. That means, you know, marketing is dialed in. And, you know, right now I'm super stoked to say we have an amazing team. Everybody is a go-getter and a hard worker. And, you know, being able to attract these types of people to a project was all about the mission, right? Everybody's super driven by the mission and passionate about what we're doing here.
What were some consideration that you had to have putting yourself in the leadership role? And was there anything you had to learn personally? Like, how did that personal balance look of like, oh, there's a little bit more responsibility on me now. There's a little bit more like that I have to weigh in. And like, how did you like measure your success of being a good leader?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that certain aspects of leadership have always kind of come naturally, you know, from, you know, being the captain of the high school basketball team to the CEO of a, you know, nationally positioned rideshare company. All along the way, there's always been this progression of leadership. I think one measure is, you know, who do you surround yourself with? Who do you attract? Who is actually vibing with you, working with you, and believing in you and the mission, right? Because first and foremost, early investors, I mean, they're not looking at any metrics.
They're looking for returns.
Well, not just that, I'm saying they're looking at the people behind it.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
You know, if you can't establish a certain leadership style and command a certain audience to really believe in what it is that you're saying, you're never going to get off the ground, right? You're just going to end up in this kind of, I don't know, limbo status where you're, you know, beating your head against the wall as to why isn't this working? But, you know, right back to Rick Chad, I mean, he believed in us pre-revenue, pre-launch, and he says this to a number of people that we meet. You know, he says, I'll quote him, "I bet on the jockey," right? So he bets on the individual that's spearheading the corporation. And here's, you know, a little insight on Rick. Rick runs and started Chad Management. Chad Management is an executive headhunting firm. So he's placed executives in positions of leadership over the last 44 years. And so it was honestly really humbling for him to back us and say that he backs a jockey and chooses a jockey with his track record of what he does for a living, how he analyzes people, how he looks into who they are and why they're doing what they're doing and what would be best for them. And, you know, it was validating, to be honest with you. To have that support and to have someone like Rick believe in us and believe in me early on, right?
a lot of question I like to ask people, especially like public facing, and I usually ask every single person this, and it's and I don't think I included this in the questions, but when we talk about managing an ego and like managing your own self-esteem, was there any instances of checking your ego, and was there any instances of imposter syndrome? And how did you kind of find the medium between that of, okay, I shouldn't be sitting at this table with these people, or I'm the shit?
You know what, man? I don't have an explanation for it, but I've definitely found the balance internally. Right. I don't know how it looks externally, but internally I found that balance, because I promise you, I reflect, and I've said this to Chris and the team many times, there's no way I should have been in that room. It doesn't make any sense how I was in that room. But it's less about me being in that room and more about HOVR being in that room at this stage. And it's just, again, super humbling to be in front of like a CEO of a multinational who's saying, I love what you're doing. I believe in that, and let's get behind it.
Yeah, it's like, it's not the person, it's the project. Like, you're like Trojan horsing the project. It's like, I'm just here delivering the idea. Yeah. Like, there's still things that everybody has to learn. Yeah. But it's the idea of like, you have to separate the person from the business and say like, yeah, like whether I'm qualified or not qualified or whatever it is, you clearly have met the expectations, or you clearly have proven that this is a life cycle that works, right? So but it's interesting to find that out, because sometimes people say like, yeah, I need a lot of like self-talk. I need to like make sure I'm always like checking in with myself every so often and saying like, where am I at? How did I talk to people? How am I doing this, right? And like, when you have these bad experiences, you go, is this an experience thing or is this a me thing?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to self-talk, like I have my morning ritual. It's where I check in with myself. It's not necessarily a reflection, but more of a projection of where I think I need to be, where I see everything else needing to be, maybe even others that are around me need to be, so that I can, I guess, be the leader that I need to be. Right. And have those talks, have those communications with the team or stakeholders, so that we can get from where we are today, which is always kind of like the worst version of whatever it's going to be, because every day things are getting better, right? Yeah. And so, when it comes to ego, I think I've seen very egotistical people through my time in Toronto. And it really turns me off. Like, I move away from them so fast. Yeah. It's just, for example, I had this guy that we were trying to do business with at one point. He'd always try to pick me up in his Lamborghini. Yeah. Ryan, I'm 6'5".
Yeah, you're like, stop doing that, man. No, you're doing too much.
I don't fit.
Yeah.
I don't fit.
Yeah.
It's a practical thing for me.
Yeah.
Right? And these things don't impress me. Right? Yeah. These things don't like get me excited, right? Like those Instagram reels of people with penthouses, Lambos, and all this kind of stuff, yachts. I've been privileged enough to spend time with people who have these types of things, and they're no happier than anybody else. Yeah. Right? So why, for me, ego is, I think that what I have is better than the next. And I don't think so. I believe in other people. I believe in, being able to find that energy that's within everybody, to kind of like hone that in and bring that out. Like, part of HOVR is honestly a message to the next generation of entrepreneurs that in Canada we can. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I like, and I don't think you would be able. I don't think if you had that other type of mentality, you would have the ability to create a business model like this, right? Of like a people first type model, and like making sure that like it's the best experience for people instead of like a money driven. Again, like people still got to get paid, but it's the idea of like 100% fair is 100% fair. There's a way to do it. You know, like spend time with Peter from Co-ops Ontario, just understanding how co-ops work. He introduced me to a number of different groups that either support co-ops, worker co-ops, or invest in them through like community bonds and all that stuff. I will say, like, co-ops are a beautiful thing. It's really hard to start one in Canada at the scale at which we're doing in our industry. But if it was, a different type of industry, we probably would have stuck with that model. The thing is, I don't see any reason to not build a model that hits the profit targets, right, in a sustainable way, that doesn't extort people and creates this balance of, profits versus impact, right? And just trust me, there is a pure profit play here if we wanted it to be, right? But whenever there's pure profit and you don't consider people, then the people are being sacrificed in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's the, product that's being put out, it's a lower quality after the high quality thing is adopted by the masses, or a service that just diminishes. Like the term for marketplaces is enshittification, right? It just gets shittier every year because, you're trying to get the bottom line as high as possible off of the backs of your users. And I just believe that we have such a privileged time in existence where tech is at this incredible inflection point where we have to take into account what can be done in the most positive way possible so that we don't head down that kind of weird dystopian path that is a possibility if we don't switch gears and point ourselves in the right direction.
So when you see this spike, you talk about you launching, and it was the first day, right? You see,
literally the first day.
You see this huge...
Yeah, it crashed.
Right.
Literally the day of the launch.
Right.
Me and my CTO are in the corner of Hotel X, like, fixing it in real time.
Yeah.
Like, that's how aggressive this was.
Was there any sort of pressure that you felt to switch your whether that be from investors, whether that be like feedback or consideration from other people of like, oh, you should be charging more, or you should do a model this way, or should do a model this way? And how did you kind of advocate? And this kind of brings me into like discussing the subscription model and the flat fee, but I kind of just wanted like the idea of like advocating for your own like creative idea, and like have you ever kind of been tested in that way of like people were like, nah, that's stupid, you could make way more money?
100%. Like regularly, even to this day, people are like, man, you should be charging $100 a month for your membership, not 20. I'm like, why? Tell me why.
It's like, I don't ask basketball advice from people that don't play basketball.
You know what I mean?
Like yeah. That's just as simple as it is.
If you have an MBA, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Like that's what I say to people all the time. Like when they're like, oh, you should have this person on, or you're doing it this way, or you're doing it that way. It's like, I don't ask basketball advice from people that don't play basketball.
Yeah.
Until you start podcasting, I don't want your criticism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's great. And I just say, thanks for the feedback, Yeah. Keep it pushing. But it's something that you kind of have to build into and like learn like, oh, I have to like start advocating for myself, or I really have to like stand on business here and be like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Listen,
can appreciate your feedback, but I'm not doing it.
Oh, I never shut doors in people's faces, right? But once they've turned around, oftentimes it's just over the top. Right? I'm done. But yeah, 10 toes down, like this is what was built. There's a theory behind it. The theory was proven, and now it's about expanding that success, right? So, let me address a few of those stakeholders. So, investors, I am so lucky, and we are so lucky that our investors have been incredible. They believe in us, they trust us, they understand what we're doing. They've also seen the numbers, so they know what's coming, and they've seen a bit more of the roadmap than maybe the general public have seen. In terms of like feature iterations and kind of what comes next. And I love that you mentioned Trojan horse earlier, because there was a little bit of that going on. But I mean, listen, people all have opinions. Drivers have opinions, right? Riders have opinions all the time, right? Investors have been great. Tons of venture capital firms have told me that we should do things this way, this way, this way to show, different 3-letter acronym results and percentiles that would be a better fit for their portfolio. Honestly, fuck you.
And that's a hard thing to do, man. That's so hard, because you're like, what opportunity might I be missing, right? Like maybe, but it's like I truly think that you have you already have enough like background understanding, as well as like that the model works. Yeah. So it's like, hey, if you were where I was, you would probably be thinking the same thing.
Well, so this is just it, right? Like people who make the comments, like you said, they don't see what you're doing. They don't have your lens. They're just coming at it from what they know, what they see.
And the intention is different. What they're trying to get out of it is totally different. So it's like, we're not looking for the same thing here, dude. Yeah. Right?
No, 100%. And so, sometimes we'll come across a big partner, right? And it's something that we probably should figure out how to do. And in those cases, when they make suggestions around how we look together versus how we should do things on our side, that's where we really take things into consideration. We'll have like a mastermind workshop on how we can make everything work out in the way that we both feel, equally respected in our respective brands, and how this should roll out to the general public. And that's really where we do take a lot of feedback and consideration. Again, but they have been in our shoes. They are business leaders, and they've clearly dominated their industry. So it makes a lot of sense to.
And do you think
learn.
it kind of takes a level of like mutual respect as well? Of like, it's like I want to invest, but I also respect your ideas and what you're trying to do.
Yes.
So it's like going back and forth of like, managing those expectations and like establishing those boundaries of like, this is where the line is, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like I think your ability to like learn about people, and like that's probably a huge element when it comes into it, of going like, how do I measure whether this person is in good faith or a bad actor?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
And this is another great point. I mean, our competitors are ruthless, right? And so you almost always, when you're meeting somebody new, are wondering in the back of your head, who do they really work for?
Right.
Right. Like you said, what's their intention?
Right.
Right. And you can quickly, over the years, right, now I can quickly determine who is doing what for what reasons. And I feel pretty good about the people that are around us. But yeah, I mean, there's always that shadow of a doubt sometimes with new connections, and what their ulterior motives may be. We've been in some driver group chats where there's clearly a plug from the opposition that's just talking mad shit in the comments, and it's like, it's gonna happen.
And you address that as it is, and like
exactly.
Now, when it comes to like think tanking and brainstorming, do you find that you have over time, like you got to keep things closer to the chest, or like how to, you know what I mean? Because it's like you get burned so many times where you're like, ooh, I don't know, I'm a little paranoid now. Yeah. Of like, I'm a little paranoid. Who knows, man? I might have like a rogue agent or something. You don't know what's going to happen, right?
I'll be honest with you, like there's been, now 2 years of our competitors doing their annual product releases, and I'm going like, who has tapped into my G Suite? This is so fucking annoying to see everything that we've brainstormed starting to come out in different versions, but same premise. Yeah. And it's like, okay, come on, like who is it? Where is it? Where's the leak? Yeah. Right? I mean, cybersecurity is a huge thing for us. Like we have a fantastic team like handling all of that. And the duo of Nim Nataraja as our chief CISO, Chief Information and Securities Officer, and our CTO, Gurjant Singh. His profession is cybersecurity. His passion is AI. So he's the perfect, person to take us from, a rideshare platform to where we'll end up in the future. Right. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you're 100% spot on. Like there's that little bit of paranoia where you go, how did they know that? Yeah. Right. And who was that? But at the same time, though, you got to keep it pushing. Right. I'll keep it pushing, but also recognize like I'm not coming up with the most, unique ideas. Like there are a few things that we've patented. There are a few things that we've got under wraps that we're very confident that in the future will play a major role in mobility, not just the rideshare space, but mobility in general. But yeah, I mean, there's those small feature sets. For example, I can't think of it right now, but it's. We thought we were going to do it first, but then it ended up coming out somewhere else. Right. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, in order to compete with this, it's going to be a lot harder now because it's not like a novelty. Well, we're just going to have to navigate through it and make sure they didn't patent it. You know what I mean? Right. Those types of things. Because we have a limited budget to patent so many things, and we prioritize which ones we see have the greatest upside to our investors in the long run. Right. Right. Have the most licensability in other markets or other, verticals of the mobility space versus some of the smaller feature sets that, seem like, oh man, eureka, genius idea, but it's really just this tiny little thing, and I'm not going to patent that, nobody's going to come up with that, and then boom, like next quarter you see it being implemented in a competitor or a new company, and again it's like, is that a conversation from that conference that I talked to that guy at that booth with? You know what I mean? Right. But no. So kind of backtracking, but not really, take me through like how the app looks today, and what are some things that you
like, what are some big major updates that you can kind of, you know what I mean? Like, what are some major things that you can kind of note that like it helped your scalability and kind of brought you to Hover 2.0?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, the UI UX for Hover 2.0 from 1.0 is it's a sexier app. It's way more user friendly. We had a ton of feedback in the first 12 months as to how we should change things from the rider and the driver side. So we're really pleased with the way that it works and it looks. And then from the back end, I mean, that's where I think the team really shines and shows their expertise and, the compression algorithms to create like the lowest cost ride per transaction, not from the transaction of the cost for the rider and the driver, but from our internal costs of actually delivering that ride through the API calls, the optimization of the tech and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's also a number of other kind of data things that we've done that we've learned from our predecessors not to do and how to do it better, but then also optimize on that so that we're positioned really well for the future of kind of how data should be governed and secured, without saying too much, but that's kind of like, some things that we're pretty proud of at Hover.
Is there ever like because I don't know anything about apps, but is there ever, like, they always talk about like building roads in like places like Chicago and stuff, and they say like, in order to build a new road or change the infrastructure, we have to repeal 10 laws. Right? So like, how does that work for you? Like, do you ever consider like if it's stacking too much on top of each other and what like the cost would be to like tear down, rebuild, and like, how do you kind of like, without going into too much, but how do you kind of like prepare yourself for that scalability but also sustainability?
Yeah, totally. So we had actually planned on having 2.0 come out at the beginning of this year, and we completely missed that target and actually released it earlier this month because of what you just identified. So one of our competitive advantages currently as a startup is that we don't have what's called tech debt, which is what you were referring to about repealing the laws to build a new road. So tech debt is when you continue to stack and build and stack and build and stack and build, assuming that, okay, what we've built is good for X amount of time and we're going to be fine because we've, crystal balled what the new technologies are going to be. If you're wrong, and you have to tear down, rebuild, and that can be an absolute nightmare, like hundreds of millions of dollars at scale, right? For us, we took the time, energy, and thoughtfulness around building again, I'm trying to be thoughtful of how I explain this, microservices backend where we can actually plug and play new things without having too much stacking.
Right.
And it's more like, if it was Lego, for example, you can actually, that might not be a good example. You know how you can pull
it's more like linear than it is like vertical. Like it's more like
it's almost like you can pull one of those vertical blocks out like Jenga, right, and then if you needed to put it back in a different side with a new look and a new shape, you could, right. I don't even know if that's a good way of explaining it.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Your John's probably gonna beat me up for saying it that way, but yeah.
Sorry, how much time we got? How much time are you going there? You're good? How much? What time is it? What time are you at?
7:42.
No, just for the recording.
Oh, I think it's live.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't give you a time? I can check right here. Oh, perfect. We're good. You guys still good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sure. Perfect. Let's get into the model. Let's get into the model of Hover. I'm curious to know where this so like for a lot of my listeners, this is probably going to be their first time they've ever heard of Hover.
For sure.
And like, but that's the goal. That's the goal of this whole coast to coast trip, is like creating that exposure. So Give me an explanation on where you came up with this model and like how exactly it benefits the driver as well as the passenger.
For sure. So it's real, I like to say it's really simple. The premise of Hover is that it's better for the riders and the drivers because riders pay less and drivers earn more. So how do we do that? What's our differentiator? I have to first address what the actual current market looks like first to show you what's different. So right now in the rideshare industry, drivers are working and 30 to 50% of their earnings are being taken as commissions to the platform. So we have 0 commissions on our platform and we add a layer of transparency to every penny that gets paid in the transaction between riders and drivers. So we have a membership model. It's kind of like Costco, right? Somebody pays, the drivers pay a membership. They keep 100% of the fares. So we're able to split the difference of that commission to be up to 20% cheaper and pay drivers up to 20% more, right? So where do we make our money? There's the fare, which is the kilometers, time, and base rate. Very similar to a taxi, but we've digitized it, added some algorithms to optimize everything. And that is what the drivers earn 100% of, no commissions. Then there's the fees. The fees are unavoidable. There's like a city fee, a payment transaction fee, and an insurance fee, and then we have a $1 flat fee. So just again, to compare to the industry standards, there's the fare and the fees, because the fees are unavoidable, but they'll take 30 to 50% of the fare plus all of the fees, right? So, and then our fee structure is significantly lower because we don't have any insurance incidents, and so our insurance is one of the best coverage plans with the lowest rates in the industry, which is huge for us. And we were really thoughtful of how we rolled out and how we got those rates. It took a long time to negotiate, but once we got to the table with the underwriters, they understood what we were doing and how we were doing it. One thing that completely sets us apart is that we do not take new drivers, brand new drivers. They have to have a minimum of 3 months experience with taxi, limo, or rideshare, right? So they have that knowledge, that understanding that they can withstand those long days in the car driving people where they need to go. And on top of that, they're able to provide a service that is slightly better, right, than maybe a new driver would, because they don't know what they're doing. They're still trying to figure it out while trying to be, courteous or respectful or hospitable, right? So we have also developed some programs like HOVR Hospitality, HOVR Helps, and a couple of other learning programs for drivers to continue their education on how to provide that ride above the rest experience that we look to offer our riders at HOVR. So not only are riders going to pay less, they're going to have a better experience with a lower risk, and all of these things compound into being able to provide an overall better experience for everybody.
And these fees, like, I'm assuming a lot of these fees are like regulatory.
Oh yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
so when you look at like scaling this and coming to places like Edmonton, what was some like considerations that you had to have with like the regulatory nature and stuff like that, and how were you able to still keep the fees and everything relatively the same, right? Like there's some things that you say are unavoidable, right? But how has that worked for you guys? Like how has that been kind of streamlined in terms of a lot of governments or a lot of provinces are relatively the same, or did you find like some huge spikes where you were like, ooh, we might have to adjust some things?
Yeah, so, luckily we have a fantastic team backing us and doing this, from the internal team to the external team. The brokers that handle our insurance, which is the number one barrier to entry for this industry. If you don't have a policy, you're not in business.
And is it only for Ontario, or when you have a policy, is that nationwide?
So you actually have to get it province to province, and this is where it comes to the differentiator between the provinces. So for example, what happens in Ontario is not the same as what happens in BC, which is also not the same as what happens in Newfoundland. So you kind of have to have a different game plan. It's not completely different. It's not, night and day, but it's definitely like day and afternoon, right? It's slightly different, and you have to adjust. And there's a ton of documentation that needs to be done. But again, that comes to the internal team, just attention to detail, handling, getting everything filed on time in the right order. And the other thing too is, not to like, bash any of the provinces or anything like that, but they have a framework, but they still don't exactly know how, what, or why they're doing it that way. They just kind of did it because, our competitor was at the table with them and said this is what they should do and this would be the best thing, but it didn't like, really bet. Well, yeah, they were like, oh, okay, well, if that's what you guys are the experts, you're doing the business, right? Yeah. But it was almost intentionally designed by those that competitor to effectively not allow a competitive environment.
Yeah, they're trying to like gatekeep you. They're trying to like keep you guys in the GTA area.
Well, not even just even
or
the
just
GTA,
Ontario.
Man. Like I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
Like across the board. Like even getting in properly licensed, insured in Ontario is not an easy thing to do.
No.
Definitely not. And it's designed that way. I can, one of the bylaws, for example, in the city of Toronto is that a driver needs to have a separate license for every company they work for, versus a taxi driver who gets one taxi license and works for any taxi brokerage. What's the difference? Well, if you have that, big bad player in the space that's sitting down and saying, we invented this space, we're telling you it needs to be like this, right? And the bylaws don't change. Well, now this is the standard, right? You get a license for the company in this. Okay, new company, you get a license for it, right? But we're looking to work with the municipalities that we look to operate in to streamline some of those bylaws, allow for a more competitive environment. We don't shy away from competition, right? At the end of the day, people will choose what's best for them, right? The drivers will choose the best company that they want to work for, and the riders will choose who they want to support, right? So we believe we're well positioned from a model and from just a brand position in general, that people will make the right choice and choose Canadian, choose HOVR as their way to get around. And we want to, like I said, work with the cities to kind of reestablish a framework that supports a better overall mobility ecosystem.
And when we talk about customer service, especially when you're scaling nationwide, what is your approach to things like customer service, and how have you been able to scale that up as well? And what are some features that you put in and able to ensure customer service?
Yeah, I mean, we live in the age of AI, and it's been getting better and better every single day. We do also have a driver success team and a customer success team that are both situated in Canada. We don't hire overseas call agents because we've heard across the board that it's the most frustrating thing to deal with.
Yeah.
And so, we have a few different ways of triaging. We'll call it a challenge that somebody may be having on either side of the marketplace. And, depending on how quickly we're able to address the issue is how it escalates versus somebody being able to click through. Like if what they've articulated in either a message on the chat in the app or an email that they've sent or a call that they've made, if our system isn't able to address it in a timely manner, then it goes to a human, right? So we do have that human element. We'll maintain that human element as long as we, possibly can at scale. But it is important for us to support Canadians with Canadian jobs, hire people in Canada to be supporting other Canadians who are going through what it is. We do look to have drivers involved, like former drivers, because they actually understand what it means to be behind the wheel. And we have committees that we've established as well, so that, like the driver committee, and the rider committee, to be able to understand the feedback loops versus just a whole, everybody putting their opinion forward. It makes its way to committee. Those committees then report back up to us. We then negotiate them more internally, and that's how we make most of our decisions at the executive level. But one of the things too that I personally like to do to stay in touch with the driver community is organize 1 hour per month. Now, I've been guilty. I haven't been able to do it this month because we've been on the road and getting after it. But 1 hour per month where it's an AMA, Ask Me Anything, and the drivers can join. If 10 join, amazing. If 100 join, amazing. And we try to address as many things as we can. Oftentimes it's more than an hour when a lot of people show up. But that's, HOVR was started through conversations with drivers. So it's really important that we maintain that.
Yeah, that's like your bread and butter.
Yeah, totally.
That's your bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of one of those things where it's like you never forget where you came from. You always got to make sure that everybody's taken care of, even when you guys are scaling up. Any peak time or surge pricing?
No, we don't do any of that stuff.
No.
We have fair pricing.
Yeah.
Where if it takes longer, it costs more.
Right.
That's kind of the basics of
right.
how
Just
that
like
works.
yeah.
And it's not like the company makes more money; it's the driver gets paid more because it took more of their time. If a service you have takes longer, usually you pay more for it.
Right.
That's
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's totally realistic.
Yeah.
Going into the culture of HOVR, the vision, future plans. We kind of briefly talked about this before we started recording, but scaling versus surviving, and how does that look for you guys? Because I think at some point you guys were kind of somewhat nodding to the possibility of this could be would you guys ever do this outside of Canada, and how would that look? And is there ever a worry that it's going to go too big too fast?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so Hover was established in Toronto as a pilot for the global stage. So this is 100% meant to be taken around the globe, city by city, market by market, but we have a little bit of a different approach to things versus raising a ton of capital from investors and doing a land grab. We look to work with established partners in locations where Hover could be successful that we've identified, and we've been super fortunate and that was kind of years down the road planning. That was our intention. We've been super fortunate that even in our first year, we had a ton of inbound requests from fantastic groups from Mexico to the UK to Australia, which we look to have online before the end of the year.
That's amazing.
Our entry point to the US is earmarked for Q4. We've got a ton of things happening, but we're just super laser focused right now on developing the Canadian market, making sure we take care of our own backyard before we start expanding into different places. But it's 100% on the roadmap to expand. And in terms of the culture, it's not about sprinting as fast as you can. It's about going at the pace that works for you and finding the people who can support you along the way, right? So what I mean by that is the partners that we have come to us and said, hey, we want to do this, we turned down a ton of them. But the 3 that we're working with right now, I mean, listen, they've got their markets figured out, they've got the partnerships figured out, they've got the politics figured out, and they've got the relationships with everything from car companies to gas stations to their charitable partners even aligned, because that is something that we also look to do as well, like partner with charities to support the communities that we operate in different ways, more than just making sure that we provide a great service. It's important that we're holistically helping, right? And finding partners that also have that mentality allows us to scale in a sustainable way and ultimately drive our revenues in a direction that makes shareholders really happy.
That's amazing, man. And I think you already kind of said it, but like the idea, where does this look in the next 12 to 18 months, and where do you guys see like a success point? How do you guys define that? Like, again, you guys are working with what you got, and you're using that momentum and based on the support of your on your investors and your drivers and people using the app. But where do you guys see as like, okay, we would really want to hit this in 12 months. Like, this is the goal.
Yeah. So right now we have a crowdfund going on, right? And it's super important for us that we spread equity across our driver community as well as the rider community. Any Canadian right now can invest with a minimum of $250. And what that does is it allows us to launch the markets across Canada. We have 16 markets across the country that, under the circumstances where we have a successful crowdfund, we meet our goals. And every cost and use of funds is actually broken down on the crowdfund page, so you can see where every dollar is going, so that you can also have a sense of why we're raising this money and what we're going to do with it. And if I was to say in 12 months, Canada would be rocking and rolling with Hover. Every city would be launched, all 16 markets, people would have recognized Hover, discovered Hover, and it's starting to become a household name, right? We're, the trip that we're on right now, it's about raising awareness. It's about creating the momentum that the country needs to basically establish ourselves as the number one player in our country, right? Expanding to some of those additional markets that we've spoken about earlier, but also like Hover 3.0, Hover, you said 12 months, 4.0, right? Making those leaps and bounds forward from a technology perspective. I mean, when it comes to features, we have a laundry list. And it's really, we're fortunate that, I can brainstorm and come up with ideas and send them to our team, and they're able to, triage them in terms of importance by having meaningful conversations with those committees, our, established relationships in the industry, different stakeholders, and then really kind of create a pipeline that's sustainable from a production standpoint. But in 12 months, I think we'll probably be at 4.0 and have an app that's, I won't say unrecognizable, but definitely a leap forward for the industry in terms of how you treat a rideshare app and how it treats you.
That's amazing, man. And final question, man. If you could give any advice to someone looking to do a startup or in an entrepreneurial field, what would you say the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone?
The biggest piece of advice, I'm going to quote Muhammad Ali, Okay, the will must be stronger than the skill. So you got to want it. You got to want it so bad. And I'll throw another quote to layer it in. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. You can come up with 1,000 solutions to a problem, but if you really fall in love with the problem and the people who are affected by it, you're going to want to wake up early and go to bed late and put in the time and hours that it takes to get from, I think this is a good idea, to holy shit, I did it. Right? And so that's what I would throw out there.
That's amazing, man. I had an amazing conversation.
Likewise.
I'm really, really thankful that you came out. HOVR launching in Edmonton, coming soon.
That's right.
Nationwide, coming soon.
That's right.
We're going to be happily using it and sharing it and kind of championing it in the city of Edmonton for you guys. And hopefully we can do our part in gaining that awareness. With that, that has been another episode of Solo Spotlight, episode 45. Don't forget to check us out on all social medias, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X. Like, share, subscribe, comment. What do you think was the most impactful part for you? Where are you going to use HOVR in your province? Where's a place in the country that you think HOVR needs to be? And we love to hear your comments and engagements, and we will go from there.
Boom.
And check us out next week. Thank you very much, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.